but we wait till we are online and I will get the sign to get started. But just to remind you that this is a main session that has interpretation in all 6 UN languages. If you want to be sure you understand, there are interpretation tools, radios outside in the foyer, and all sessions are being live streamed and interpreted, so you can also watch it on the IGF website and YouTube channel to watch and share. So we're waiting for the signal to get started. Oh, I have the signal, so we can get started, okay? Once again, good afternoon. My name is Markus Kummer. I was the co-facilitator of the DC, the Dynamic Coalition main session, together with Avri Doria, who's sitting down there in the second row. And Avri, who is also a MAG member, has taken it on her to observe the Twitter sphere and will report back what she sees on tweets going on about this session. Let me say a few words on the history of Dynamic Coalition and on these sessions. The Dynamic Coalitions started with the very first IGF meeting in 2006. It was then a kind of compromise between those who didn't want any intersessional activity and those who wanted to set up working groups that would continue their work throughout the year. So dynamic coalitions are essentially self-formed, self-appointed, and very much in a bottom-up way. Now, the first 9 years or so, they all had their own life in the margins of the IGF. And last year, for the first time, we got together and said it would be time to give them center stage and to show the broader community what they had done and achieved, and also to get feedback from the broader community. And immediately after João Pessoa, we continued with regular calls in also preparing some common principles all the dynamic coalitions would abide to. That is to be open, to have open archives, open lists, be open to membership, and also to agree to make dissenting opinions public. And this session, we thought it would be tedious if we allow each dynamic coalition to read out the report. They have all prepared a report, and all the reports are available on the website of the IGF website. And I encourage you all to look at them and read them. There is a lot of substantive work that have gone on. But we thought in order to make it a little bit more dynamic, we would ask a moderator to be a kind of agent provocateur, to engage in a dialogue with the dynamic coalitions. And of course, we also hope to have a dialogue with an interactive session with all participants. But before going into the session, I would like to invite our host country chair, Victor Lagunes, to say a few words. Please, Victor.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you so much to everyone. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you. On behalf of the Mexican government and the co-presidency of the MACI, thank you for your presence. I thank you for the debate that we're still building on during these few days of work. We are in day number 3 of the IGF, 4 if we count day 0, and we are achieving our goals when it comes to feedback and the different comments that we have been listening to during these days. Everybody here is very happy. We are truly touching on different subjects in a deep way, and we are generating an enriching conversation for all of us. I hope for you as well. I would like to thank Markus Kummer for inviting me to be chair of this panel, integrate representatives of the MAG. They are also co-facilitators of this session. Dynamic coalitions for us are extremely important. They truly demonstrate the richness of the internet as well as the different themes that are brought up along the way and that are common goods. It was positioned quite well last year in Joa Pessoa. And as Mr. Kummer said, this was a focal point. The scope of interest is very large and enriching and interesting. From the role of the internet in climate change, the work of dynamic coalitions is a demonstration of this richness that brings about many things to the internet community. I also thank our moderator, Tatiana Trupina, and I formally declare this session as open. I hope it will be a productive one. Thank you very much.
Over to Tatiana, I would like to invite Jeremy Malcolm from the Electronic Frontier Foundation to say a few words on the Dynamic Coalition issue survey he has organized. Please, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Marcus. So the issue survey is a way to connect the dynamic coalitions to the broader IGF community, as Marcus has explained that we've decided to do. They're a simplified version of the output documents that each dynamic coalition has produced this year, or at least 12 of the 16 dynamic coalitions have produced this year, and they've extracted 5 points for your feedback. And you can submit your feedback using paper versions of these feedback sheets, which are available in the Dynamic Coalition booth in the IGF Village, or you can use the version that's online on the IGF website. So by means of exposing 5 key points from their documents to the broader community, the dynamic coalitions are able to refine and improve their outputs. The idea is that you all will complete these surveys after you've had you've informed yourselves of the content of the Dynamic Coalition's work, either by reading their documents or participating in this session, or we also had a webinar which some people participated in. And you may have attended some of the Dynamic Coalition meetings during the week. So now that you have done that, you'll be informed enough to complete these surveys, and you can express agreement, disagreement, or somewhere in between on each of the 5 points that the Dynamic Coalitions have put to you. So if it turns out that there's very strong agreement on a particular point, the Dynamic Coalition can take that as a kind of informal validation of their work by the respondents to the survey. Or if there's strong disagreement, then they may realise that they haven't quite hit the mark, and maybe there needs to be some more discussion and knowledge exchange, or maybe this is just a proposition that they can't find support for. So we hope that you will take the time to either visit the IGF booth or to complete the idea rating sheets, the feedback forms online. We'll be keeping them open for 1 month after the IGF closes, and after that we'll be collecting the responses and returning them to the Dynamic Coalitions. So we very much hope that you'll participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for the explanation, and thank you also very much for the hard work you put into this. And with that, I can hand over to Tatiana Trupina. Please, you have to rush up on the stage. Make sure you're not out of breath when you reach us. Please, Tatiana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Can you all hear me well? So I would like to explain a bit the flow of the session. We are going to ask Dynamic Coalition to present their work, but they will be presenting it with the questions from me. So they don't really know what kind of questions I'm going to ask, because I'm an agent provocator. And after 45 minutes of them answering the questions, we are going to open the floor for you, for your questions. Please be as controversial as you can. And also, even if you have a pressing need to ask the question, please wait till these 45 minutes will expire, because we are going to listen to Dynamic Coalitions first. A bit of administrative. So if you're going to ask a question, please raise your hand, and there would be people with microphones around. They will come to you. And the last thing, we are going to use the Twitter wall, but not projected on the screen. There is Avri Doria, who is sitting over there, who is monitoring the tweets. So please tweet any question you want to ask. The hashtags are IGF 2016 and DC. So you have to use 2 hashtags to ask the questions. And it was actually quite hard to choose which dynamic coalition I will start with, because there is alphabetical order. You can cluster the issue. And I decided to start with the oldest dynamic coalition, I think the oldest existing, and it's a dynamic coalition on accessibility and disability. And I would like to ask Andrea the following question. Andrea, I read your paper and it really struck me in a sense that you have been fighting for such a long time for accessibility for old people, for people with disabilities, and there are still unresolved issues. But at the same time, we have all these new technologies developing, Internet of Things, self-driving cars, and so on. So what is your dynamic coalition doing? What has been done so far, and how you're going to address existing issues and include new issues as well? Thanks.
Thank you, Tatiana. Well, I have 2 hats. I'm also the Joint Coordination Activity on Accessibility and Human Factors Chairman for the ITU. And the ITU supports the, by giving it a website and a secretariat, the Dynamic Coalition, and Malcolm Johnson was the one who is now the Deputy Secretary General of the ITU, and gave us that amount of support. Standardization is on one level, and a lot of problems in actually making IGF accessible. So our work is actually twofold. We produce something, and it's taken a few years to write and many years to implement, we call ourselves DICAD, Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, so it's DICAD. The guidelines, accessibility guidelines, which actually are being used to some extent here, but not completely, and it tells us how to make an accessible meeting. We didn't have captioning in front of me, or even I could see my face, anything to see in the beginning. We now have that. That was a suggestion made by DICAT. There were other issues about accessible hotels and all that kind of logistic stuff that we need to have. On the other hand, we deal with areas that are important to persons with disabilities, like procurement will enable us to have accessible tools and services, and we need to have a push behind that. And every single person who has given a presentation, save one, was a person with disabilities, including myself. So there we are. So we all have issues, but we work with persons with disabilities all the time. We do not do anything without them. So the problem is twofold. Standardization is the key to getting globalization, and we can't have unilateral acceptance or use of the internet unless we all work from the same hymn note. The problem is that we've got proprietary companies who have to make a living, who perhaps won't implement certain techniques that need to be done either in making their websites accessible, they don't have the expertise, or they don't implement the accessibility features that are in standards. There are other issues of training people on how to deal with persons with disabilities, and they need to listen to them, because when we've come here, any IGF meeting, there are always difficulties, but when we actually work with the individual, it's a piece of cake. They get it, they understand, they correct it. Now, why can't we get that done in advance? So now we've come up with another great idea. Training, IGF training for persons who are going to be assisting persons with disabilities, so they know what to expect, they know what they have to do for both the venue and the human being. I really want to stress that the Dynamic Coalition is a part of the IGF, contributing to the IGF, so that not only do we have accessibility, but awareness, and also to encourage standardization, including the Internet of Things, which is going to make life really better for persons with disabilities. That's what the Dynamic Coalition does. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for this wonderful intervention and also for keeping up with time. And from accessibility and disability, I would like to go to the online coalition on gender and internet governance. And my question would be, both terms are broad. Both of them are encompassing so many things. So when you talk about gender and internet governance, are you talking about gender at the IG venues? Are you talking about kind of equal gender access to technologies and internet? Are you talking about pressing issue of harassment, and from which perspective, male, female, because I believe both can be harassed. So if you can just explain what this coalition is focusing on exactly, and maybe briefly what has been done. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot. When we talk about gender and internet governance, I think we talk about a range of things. To begin with, we start with the premise that all genders must shape, define, and participate in internet governance. And so it's very important that men, women, as well as people who define themselves as trans or through other gender identities, are able to participate in panels, in processes, whether it's the Internet Governance Forum, whether it's the bodies that are responsible for internet governance, whether it's online processes or physical meetings. Related to that, I think, is also the question that when we think of the internet user, we tend to think of a neutral internet user who doesn't have a gender. And we would like to change that conversation to thinking of users as embodied, which means some users are men, some are women, some are of different genders. And we believe that that will help us actually come to a better understanding of some of the fundamental issues that affect, say, privacy or free expression. Just to give you one example, if we think of free expression through the lens of gender and we think of online harassment, we are seeing more and more that online harassment which occurs through speech or through expression is restricting the free expression of women, right? So the whole free expression concept has to then account for gender, has to account for women's experiences in a sense. So that's one piece of it. I think the other issue is really, like, if we look at an issue like access, for instance, right? We have to look at all the concerns related to that and how we can bring on women as well as trans people online as equal participants. So it's a number of things, and I think the kind of work that we've done, we are also looking this year actually at, we have just presented at the Gender Dynamic Coalition a draft sexual harassment policy, anti-sexual harassment policy, to ensure that there are no incidents in the processes or in the physical meeting of the Internet Governance Forum, because there have been in certain other internet governance bodies a couple of incidents, and we would feel this kind of thing needs to be addressed in advance so that people of all genders feel comfortable in this space. And we've also used the technique of what are called gender report cards, where for the last, from 2012 onwards, we've monitored the participation of women and men in the IGF meetings as participants, as panelists, and as moderators. And we are very happy to say that the numbers are actually going up, and there's definitely greater gender balance within the IGF. I think in the year ahead, we'll just change focus slightly. And an unrealized aspiration from last year was to actually work with some of the other DCs to see how a gender perspective can actually be infused into all our work together. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful to our panelists that they really stick to time. The next coalition I would like to inquire to take the floor is Coalition on Protecting Other Vulnerable Targets, and its Online Child Safety Coalition. John, we know how much you have already done in protecting children online. My question to you might sound a bit controversial, but that's what I'm here for. There are many problems in the field of child online protection, and it can be viewed from different angles, from educating children to safe behavior online, from protecting them being exploited, child grooming, anything you can imagine. Why does your coalition concentrate on age verification systems? Why did you pick up this topic? Why do you think this is of uppermost importance among all other topics your coalition could have dealt with?
Well, first of all, it's not the only topic we've been dealing with, but we're in a space, the internet, that's famous for innovation, famous for trying to use technology in new and different ways. And so, and certainly within the country that I'm from, the United Kingdom, we are attempting to use available technology to protect children from one particular aspect of issues confronting them on the in the internet space. And it's certainly not an alternative to good sex education. It's certainly not meant to supplant parental supervision or anything of that kind. And actually, to be quite specific about it, within the United Kingdom, for example, but I'm sure it will be true in many other countries, we have laws which say if you are a pornography publisher operating out of the UK jurisdiction, you are required by law to have age verification so as to ensure that persons under the age of 18 will not normally be able to access your content. And that works very well. I mean, we have systems of fines and so on, so the companies comply. The British-based companies comply. The problem, of course, is that the great majority of pornography sites, and there's a problem with the word pornography because it doesn't quite describe some of the horrible stuff that we are actually speaking about. Most of those are outside of the United Kingdom, and so you can't bring them to court and enforce compliance with our laws. So we've devised a system which in the end depends upon each site having to age verify people coming to them to demonstrate that they're over the age of 18 before they can gain access to the material. And by the way, this is specifically aimed at commercial pornography sites. It's not all pornography sites, it's commercial ones, it's businesses. By the way, that includes the so-called free sites because they are actually highly commercial ventures. And it's not about censorship, it's not about getting stuff removed, it's simply about trying to ensure that our laws are complied with and that children are not exposed to this material can't find it easily accessible and not exposed to it by accident. Most of the big porn companies, I'm thinking in particular of MindGeek, which owns Pornhub, for example, have indicated that they are happy to comply. They will comply with the new law. It's still in Parliament. It's completed its passage through the House of Commons. It's now in our upper chamber. It will be on the statute book in February and probably operational within 18 months of that date. There will be a run-in period. So just to stress, this is not the only thing we think about, but this is new. It's happening now. It's about innovation. It's about countries seeking better child protection in relation to the internet space. So we thought we'd bring it to your attention.
Thank you very much. I somehow keep holding microphone in the wrong way. So coming from one angle of innovation to another angle of innovation, I would like to ask Dynamic Coalition on community connectivity. I think community connectivity made itself very visible as a concept at this IGF. Luca, what is your coalition dealing with? How do you understand community connectivity and how you are actually moving this agenda forward?
Thank you, Tatiana, for the question. So first of all, let me say that I think the Dynamic Coalition on Community Connectivity is the newest one. We have been established only this year. We have started working in January, and it was actually a natural consequence of a workshop that was organized last year in João Pessoa on community networks. So at that workshop, a lot of very passionate people came, and we understood that we could merge our efforts to try to have more visibility on an issue that deserves to have visibility, particularly when we speak about connecting the next billion. And actually, I think we have managed to have a lot of visibility. And I think what we are going to do over the past years and what we have been doing this year is to try to let the policymakers and all internet users let them understand that there is also another paradigm, an alternative paradigm that could be utilized to connect the next billion, which is actually not to connect them, but to let them build their own connectivity. And we have both a declaration on community connectivity, where we define what is connectivity, what are community networks, what are the community network users, and we also have produced a report. That is the first report we have produced, and we will produce more, where we analyzed not only the technical features of community networks, but also the governance of community networks. And it is very interesting to note, analyzing all these different examples, that it is not only a way to provide internet access, it's a true way of providing sustainable connectivity and to engage local communities. The local communities build their own infrastructure, they design them, they manage them, they maintain it. And being involved in the infrastructure, they also, the positive externality of this is that, at least one of the positive externalities, is that they also acquire digital literacy. They organize themselves socially. People that otherwise will be completely disconnected start to be local entrepreneurs and to be able to communicate with others, to sell their product, to produce new product. And another very important element that emerged from the report, and that is also reflected in the declaration, is that it is not only a paradigm that one can apply to rural populations, to low-income populations. It is actually something that works very well also in developed country. In a high-income country, there is one very prominent example of the Wi-Fi network that covers the entire region of Catalonia in Spain, and that is already generating more than 100 direct jobs of people that are working to maintain the network. So it is not something, there is no dichotomy between community network and private initiatives. On the contrary, a lot of community networks are organized by not only by local NGOs, by local community, but also by local entrepreneurs. So we have tried to describe this in the report and to set some basic principles on which we can all agree in the declaration. I invite you all to use the survey to provide us feedback so that we can refine it and have a finalized document by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from your dynamic coalition on community connectivity, I would like to go to another coalition which relates to connectivity, but on innovative approaches to connect the unconnected. And it's also, I gathered, a very new coalition which started just recently. And I want to ask you, Christopher, what is this about your coalition? Does it overlap with what Luca and his guys are doing? And how are you actually encompassing these challenges, and what are you focusing on? Thanks.
So thank you very much. I should say, before I do anything, I should say thank you to the government of Mexico for being so welcoming. We are overwhelmed by your hospitality. The generosity of your volunteers has simply been astounding, and we are deeply grateful for your hosting us here. I think we actually may be the youngest dynamic coalition, having been approved just in May. I think we're certainly the most energetic. You may have seen us wearing the orange. It's partly in support of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women, and it's part of our colors. Also, you probably recognize us, we're the ones with the coffee in the village. I must make a public announcement. Today is the last day for coffee, so I will apologize in advance. Please don't shoot the messenger. Anyway, so our work this doesn't really overlap with the one on community networking. We actually depend on them to provide us the information we need to do our work. In fact, what we are doing is we are aware that there are the multitude of attempts or innovative ways people are using to connect people to the internet. Much of it being done by community networks, but also done by governments, done by nonprofit organizations, done by corporations in different experiments. And what I've talked about when I talk to ministers, they're almost baffled by the variety. They hear people convinced that some technology is the future. And we decided that what we needed is a solid empirical foundation to make those assessments. And so we made a commitment to look at every single implementation we can find of an innovative way to connect people to the internet, demand side and supply side. We have a list of over 200, and we are going to make a good faith effort to do data validation on every single one. We're going to write a case study, a narrative case study describing it so that we can share the benefits of this information. And we're going to attempt in the next year to develop common metrics to allow comparisons across projects. Now, what I've been learned in this process is those comparisons are very risky and hard to draw because, as Luca noted, There's tremendous variety just within community networking, and that in fact part of it is to complexify the problem and to understand in fact what are some best practices, but what are the key differences so that we can make a context-specific or context-sensitive assessment of how this platform goes forward. I'll give you one example of a case study. I'll do it very briefly. There's an organization called EcoNet Wireless in Zimbabwe. They are in an area where there is no electric power. They are setting up 3G cell towers powered by diesel generators that use not only that power to provide internet service, but use the excess capacity to provide the first electric power to homes in these areas that they've ever had. We've also been unable to distribute vaccines because vaccines must be kept refrigerated. Through another initiative, they are called Energize the Chain. They are putting refrigerators in all the base stations and using it to distribute vaccines that have now vaccinated 250,000 children, and they're preparing to expand this into India and Ghana. So that's just one example of the stories that we've learned, and they are attempting to develop solar solutions because diesel is not environmentally sustainable. That's a learning that we can identify and help share with everyone else, because there are many other initiatives that are attempting to find solar solutions to these problems as well. What we need from the IGF community is already your welcoming. We appreciate that. We need your help identifying additional case studies. I'm humbled by the fact that so many people here have done this. In fact, the woman from Vanuatu remotely participated. She found participating in this to be deeply validating. She felt alone, was losing energy, and this has renewed her faith. I told her she inspires us, not the other way around. We need your help to make this work and to publicize and to bring stories in, and for that we thank you very much, and we hope to work with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Actually, thank you very much for coffee. It made all my mornings here. It's a wonderful coffee booth. But I'm moving from coffee to Stuart, who is representing Dynamic Coalition on Public Access in Libraries. How do you contribute to connectivity? I believe that your coalition is connected to connectivity issue as well. So maybe you can provide your perspective.
Certainly, thank you. How do we contribute to connectivity? Well, the libraries we're talking about mostly in our Dynamic Coalition, we'll start with public libraries. 320,000 public libraries worldwide. 230,000 of those are located in developing countries. And the public library in many places is the first place that the unconnected go to get online. So as libraries have moved with the times and begun to provide access to internet-connected computers, we play an extremely strong role in bringing the connectivity to the community. I noted Luca mentioned the community network in Spain, and just as an example, the libraries are part of that community network. We're very, very strong at bringing the internet right the way down to the grassroots level. But of course, we do a little bit more than that, and in the Dynamic Coalition, we discuss a number of other things, because I think that there's general agreement now in the IGF and within these discussions that access is not enough. So we bring a lot of other things to the table, including skills training, digital skills training, beginning to understand the computers for the first time, but going a bit deeper into media and information literacy training. We're the sort of institution that, because of the values that libraries have, we're accessible to everybody. So, you know, everybody is going to be able to walk through the doors in a public library and utilize the computers to get online. We're particularly good at providing access in remote and rural places, where often the library is the only community institution that's connected, and we become hubs for people who, for example, might have family members that are working in big cities or even other countries to stay in contact with their families. The same places, libraries act as safe spaces for some of the other groups that the Dynamic Coalitions we've heard from before. We are safe spaces for women and girls. We have plenty of research that shows that women and girls are far more likely to want to get online in a library than they are in a telecentre or in a cafe space. And as I mentioned, we're open for people with disabilities, all sorts of access issues. The thing I think which is really important in the conversations we're now having about bringing the next 1.5 billion people online is that we're a scalable solution. In the countries of the world, these public library networks already exist. If they're not connected to the internet, then we would be strongly encouraging governments to do so, because we've taken a look at the sorts of goals and targets that the SDGs want to hit, And as far as we can work out, there really is no way that we're going to bring those big numbers online without a public access component. So as some of the work that we're doing within the Dynamic Coalition, we produced a set of principles on public access in libraries. And as a result of that, we've now begun to work with people from, for example, the IEEE, Microsoft, at looking about how we can sort of bring other partners in, and we're starting to talk with the DC and community connectivity to run a number of pilot projects and to see what we can do to really ramp up internet access in the community through libraries. There's a couple of other things which I'd point out, which we discuss here at the IGF, which we can also bring to the table. We produce and we preserve and we provide access to local content, often developed by people in the community, and an issue that we've discussed here at length. We also act as deliverers of government services, and we've often talked about electronic and online services needing to get right down to the community, and we do that. And we act as the digital memory very often in the community, whether that community is nation-sized or even just down right at the local community level. So we really feel that we cover a lot of bases of the issues discussed here at the IGF, and I think over the next year we're looking forward to working with more DCs.
Thank you very much. And from principles on public access in libraries, I would like to move to internet rights and principles. Hanan, I read the Charter on Human Rights and Principles for the Internet. We all know, working in this space, how many charters, how many documents, how many principles we have, and how many of them just stay on paper. I would like to ask you what your Dynamic Coalition is doing to actually promote this, to actually reach your audience. This is the first question. And the second question, what would success mean for you in promoting this document? Just awareness raising, or people signing up, or organization endorsement? So yes, what is your definition of success for your coalition?
Thank you, Tatiana. First, I would like to thank our hosts in Mexico for the great organization and the great help that we get. Thank you for all the help that we get from the Secretariat to be able to do our work, Eleonora, and the leadership of Marcus Kummer. Well, this is a very good question. And, you know, all the dynamic coalitions we heard before cover different issues, and the internet now, without defining a common framework of principles which respects human rights, I don't think we can function. So the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Rights and Principles is one of the oldest dynamic coalitions of the IGF. It was established in 2009. I think the achievement of the Dynamic Coalition, if I may say, that it has been a base document for many policy-making processes in different countries around the world, mainly in New Zealand and in Italy. So I think that's a success, and maybe I'm jumping to your second question. So the Charter and the principles was used as a base document in these two countries. On the top of that, it was also used to build the capacity of communities which are not very familiar with human rights, namely in the Middle East. So a campaign was led by a program that I happen to manage. It's on internet governance for the Middle East and North Africa, and it was pitched also to government institutions, hoping that these principles would be coded in the legislation at the local level. But the point is, the Charter is the primary, let's say, customer of this Charter is people who would like to understand a little bit more about the principles which govern the internet from a human rights perspective. So we obviously target regions where there is less knowledge about human rights. We try also to outreach to policymakers all around the world without any exceptions. The Charter is available in the principles are available in 25 languages, and the Charter itself is available in 7 languages, which means we're putting a huge effort in trying to achieve the global, internet community. What else? I mean, we're doing a lot of work, from building capacity to providing a platform for a discussion on internet rights and principles. Anybody, it's not easy to work on a charter. I mean, I know that you mentioned there are so many principles around, but the quality of our work is recognized because we are actually we're advising on internet principles to the Council of Europe, so we are recognized with our work and the efforts that we put into promoting, the work of the IGF as well. So it's a win-win situation. I'm also pleased to have a group of students from a law school in Syracuse University who are connected to us remotely now, and they worked on a resource guide to explain the Charter and make it more digestible for the overall, community. So I'd like to thank them for all the work that they did this year, and I hope, we can find ways to promote the work that we do here in the IGF, and we're definitely willing to define the cross-cutting issues that we heard here in the panel to improve our work and be an outstanding dynamic coalition for the rest of the life of the IGF.
Thank you very much, and hello to Syracuse students. I hope they are connected from public library. But my next question goes to Olivier, who is representing the Dynamic Coalition on Core Internet Values. I would like to know how they actually differ from rights and principles. Is there any, oh no, I have not finished my question yet. How they differ from...
You scare me, you're right behind me.
No, you have to memorize my question. How do they differ from rights and principles? And also, maybe you can tell, what does it mean core value? Because on the one hand, in your paper, you say that they're really core, their values. On the other hand, you say that we might change them, add something. So could you please elaborate a bit on this within a short time and explain your rationale? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. So the core values, core internet values, differ from the rights and principles in that they're not based on human rights. They're actually technical values that were, I guess, adopted when the makers of the internet, the fathers and mothers of the internet back 20, 30, 40 years ago, put this whole network of networks together. So they're all technical in nature, and we have seen over the years that some have remained cast in stone, and others appear to have somehow withered in one direction or another. I'll give you a list of the few that this year we've been looking at and that we've been tracking and finding out whether they have been changed or whether there's been an improvement or a worsening of the situation regarding the value. We looked at the global fact of the internet, the interoperability, the openness, the decentralization of the internet, the fact that it should be end-to-end, user-centric, robust and reliable. But the reason that we're here is actually to really start asking ourselves of whether these are just cast in stone or whether the internet is actually evolving. And if the internet is evolving with perhaps new threats or new challenges, do we need new values? Do we need to amend the values that we were on before? And that's the reason why I'm actually here to listen to you, people in the audience, rather than actually ramble and speak about our paper. Our paper is online, and I'd be interested that you can probably take the next 20 minutes or 5-10 minutes to read through it. One of the questions that we've addressed here this time is with the new threats, such as, for example, the use of the Internet of Things for denial of service attacks, malware, etc. Should we have new values implemented, such as value to protect people from harm, from technical harm on the Internet? And we've actually had the chance to start collaborating with the Internet Dynamic Coalition on Internet of Things, who you're going to hear about in a few moments. And we have, and I think we will, continue collaborating with the Internet Rights and Principles, because, as I said, it's a subset of the rights and principles. Thank you.
Olivier, well, it is very interesting because maybe I wasn't going to move to the Dynamic Coalition of the Internet of Things, but you basically forced me to do so. So my next set of questions goes to Martin. Martin, can you please tell me what kind of contribution your Dynamic Coalition can make? I work in the cybersecurity area, and Internet of Things is discussed everywhere. It's on the top of the agenda of technical community, international organizations. How are you going to contribute? How are you actually contributing now? And the second part of the question relates to what Olivier was talking about. How are you going to contribute to this safety against DDoS attacks? Is there any way your coalition can actually contribute? Thanks.
Thank you, Tatjana, for the questions. IoT is on the top of the agenda in business already for some time, and increasingly also for other policy makers, etc. What you see, however, is all these discussions are local or in specific silos, I would say. And what we do is to really have all stakeholders meet at equal level, at equal footing, to talk about global good practice issues. With that, I think the focus is different than in all the other networks. And we do hope, and via the networks of people and information, that our thinking on global good practice will be taken into account and help the world to find its place in that way forward. Now, you're right on the security issues. I mean, like anything, really the triggers are for change, that something hurts in society and something is noticed in society. Sometimes the Titanic has to sink. I'm not sure that the Titanic has sunk already, but for sure the DIN attack of a month ago that took down some websites had a clear reference to the Internet of Things as being one of the causes, because many things on the Internet today are in a way mini computers that have capacity to collaborate to such an attack, but they've not been secured fully, or they have passwords that are very standard, or even sometimes indicated in the manuals that are available online too on those tools. It's clearly a situation where we need to move away from. Security is important, for some things more important than for others. This morning I was also in the session on child online safety, where dolls are nowadays also sometimes connected. It's clearly that the level of sensitivity there is different than, for instance, from your Fitbit that you may have on your arm where you share your information from. So these levels of sensitivity for privacy, for security, and also for safety need to be understood. Security is also a very good example to say it's not one player who can do it. This is multi-stakeholder. The businesses that make these tools that go online, these things, they may need to take into account that these things are not all protected in the same way and that good security is possible. Network providers, where all this data will be exchanged, they may need to step up to their roles as well to securing the communications and preventing attacks or use of tools for things they're not used, they shouldn't be used for. But in the end, it's also the user itself that should play its role, and it requires them to be aware and to know how to do it, and to be enabled to do so by the technologies offered. So all that together requires more attention. It's become more urgent. And I dare say people have become more aware of this as well. So let's go on improving this. We need the Internet of Things. We need that to manage our increasingly dense societies. But we also need to be aware of the dangers that comes with. So I think we're right on target with that. And there's much to do to make sure we're not going to end up in a world we don't want.
Thank you very much. I think that if we make a pool of words which make it a buzzword last year, along with Internet of Things, there would be 0 rating. And I would like to ask Luca to put on his hat of Dynamic Coalition on net neutrality and elaborate a bit on 0 rating being in the heart of this debate and on this tension between access and connection, and maybe connected the unconnected, and equality of access. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Tatiana. So, first of all, let me say that at the Dynamic Coalition on Net Neutrality, we have been working over the past 4 years, producing already a lot of outcomes for reports, a model framework, a policy statement. And so this year we have produced another report, yet another one, with exploring a further level of complexity. So we already have some sort of agreement on net neutrality within the coalition on what could be defined, how could be defined, sorry, and what could be the rationale of net neutrality, which is indeed to keep the internet as an open platform for communication, for free communication, free participation, and free cooperation, and also for free innovation. And here, this year, we have explored particularly zero rating, but not only zero rating. There are 7 chapters of the book on zero rating and 3 on net neutrality implementation and exceptions. It is very useful, I think, this report to have an informed debate on zero rating, and that is something that is lacking in a lot of countries where zero rating policy have been elaborated or are going to be elaborated. What is very useful also in the report is that it is not some sort of propaganda pro or against zero rating. It's actually quite balanced, and you have some chapters that are highly in favor and others that are highly against, and some others that discuss the policy that has been elaborated so far. It's a true multi-stakeholder effort. There is a chapter from from actually the person that was chairing the BEREC group that elaborated the European Union guidelines. There are 3 chapters from the private sector, 4 from academics, and a couple from civil society. So coming back to the question and trying to reply in 2 minutes, the big issue of zero rating is that it has been portrayed as the only or the main technique to connect the unconnected. And actually, if you have in mind my speech of the previous coalition, you will understand that it's not the only way. There are also other ways that could be taken into consideration. And actually, there are other ways that look more sustainable, particularly if our goal is to preserve the internet as it was designed, a generative, general-purpose network where the users are not only consumers of specific predefined applications. That was the telephone network or the Minitel. In the internet, users are prosumers. They can both produce application and content and consume it. So the analysis that you find here can provide you some element to understand whether zero rating could be a useful policy or not. What are the costs and benefits? What are the risks? And in my view, and I've authored one of the chapters, the risk that we are taking with zero rating is to transform the internet from a generative, general-purpose network to a predefined purpose network that is much easier to control. And that is also, I think, a reason why some governments are very much in favor of zero rating, because actually if you only have to police 5 applications or 6 for communication, it's much easier than police the entire internet. So I think that there are some very good elements here that you could analyze, and there is in the survey, I apologize because in the survey there are not only 5 questions, but 10, because there are 10 different chapters here with 10 completely different arguments that are analyzed. So if you want to take the survey and provide us your feedback, it will be very welcome. Thank you. Sorry, just one last thing. Both reports will be on the IGF website, and you can already find them on internet-governance.fgv.br.
Thank you very much, Luca. It's apparently very interesting, and I hope there would be more questions. We have only 2 dynamic coalitions left, and certainly another booth board, blockchain technologies and coalition on blockchain technologies. I really enjoyed reading your paper, the coalition paper, and there was one thing that really struck me if I look at my notes, is this tension that you highlight between technically building decentralization and knowing what the aim of your decentralization is, like decentralization as a mean or decentralization as a goal. And I would like to ask you, why do you think the paradigm shift from technically building this decentralization to knowing your aim is needed? Thank you.
So part of it is the significant hype that surrounds blockchain technologies. Anybody and everybody wants to incorporate blockchain technology into whatever it is they're doing, whether it makes a lot of sense or not. And from our perspective, in order to know whether blockchain technology is useful for your aim or not, you have to ask first what aims you hope to achieve by decentralization. Are we decentralizing just for decentralizing's sake? We hope not. That's not something the Dynamic Coalition would recommend. In that case, the question becomes what aspects of social, economic, cultural, or political life, or whatever task you have at hand, what aspect of shared facts that you need immutable record of, what is it that you are doing that could benefit from decentralized organization? In which areas could folks be given a stronger voice in claiming their own rights, in asserting their values, if they had a more decentralized way of organizing at their fingertips, and if they could use that tool to build more flatter, more transparent governance tools, if they could build their values and their culture into the operating governance structures of the technology that they're using to organize online itself. This is the work of the Dynamic Coalition on Blockchain Technologies. We try to identify areas ripe for change through decentralized architecture. We try to identify the purpose of that change and to consider how and to what extent blockchain technologies could be used to achieve that change. Sometimes we conclude that blockchain technology isn't what should be used to achieve that change, and we think that that's a good thing. We don't want to be the group that says, blockchain, blockchain to everything, right? That's not what we hope to achieve. Instead, we think that to identify the appropriate areas for use of blockchain technologies, that we need this. We need a multi-stakeholder discussion, a multi-stakeholder sort of brainstorming of what areas could benefit from the unique aspects of decentralization and decentralized organization that blockchain technologies can provide. Yeah, that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. It answers perfectly. Thank you, Carla. And from blockchain, we are moving to the very last dynamic coalition represented at this session. I think there are more of them, but there are only coalitions which submitted the papers. And this is Dynamic Coalition on Internet and Climate Change. I really had difficulties to come up with a question to this coalition because I really would like to understand whether it overlaps with ICT and climate change. What are you actually doing as a coalition? What is in the agenda of your work and what has been done already? Thanks.
Thank you, Tatiana. Before I start, let me start with a caveat that this is not my area of expertise at all. And I'm presenting this on behalf of my colleagues who all had scheduling problems, and I was the last man standing. So with that caveat, let me start. So my answer would be, I would encourage people here and those who are participating remotely to read the report of the Dynamic Coalition. Just quickly, a few sentences on what the report has. So there's a section which highlights the role of ICTs in dealing with climate change. And ICTs do play a very pivotal role in, in raising awareness and creating dialogue channels, obviously, on the effects of climate change, and helping providing channels, communication means for advocacy. Obviously, also, there are very, very innovative ICT-driven innovations available on energy efficiency, human health, urban development, smart metering, smart grids, for energy management. Many of these are addressed in the report. And obviously, the close link to the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 13, is stressed there. There's also this interesting paradox that, ICTs are obviously a catalyst in mitigating the effects of climate change, but they're also a contributor to climate change. So for those you may not be aware of the stats, ICTs actually account for 2% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, it's been projected to aid the reduction of GHG by 16% by 2020. So you can say overall we come out well. And that's why we should continue viewing the ICTs as a catalyst for achieving climate change goals stipulated in the SDGs, and also the targets determined by COP21. In the report, we list a number of areas of action of our members, including the ITU, the organization that I belong to, the EBU, and many others on awareness raising, on capacity building, developing standards, recommendations, developing tools, and we continue to encourage all stakeholders to participate. There are a few takeaways from the work of the group, and one is within the IG community, we need to do more to highlight the issue of climate change while considering internet governance discussions. Also, while discussing issues like sustainable growth, sustainable development, climate change should be taken into greater consideration and incorporated into discourse. And I've been involved in the IGF since Hyderabad, 2008. And I think I've seen the Dynamic Coalition on climate change meet in every session of IGF. This probably is the first time the group is in meeting. And they've also organized workshops, side events on this topic. But the group members have noticed, and I'm paraphrasing them, they've noticed that there's a limited audience for this topic at the IGF. As the focus of the forum is on core internet governance matters. The Dynamic Coalition members have agreed to meet annually also at the WSIS Forum in Geneva, where there has been continued active engagement on this topic, and to report back to the IGF on results and the progress made. And here, let me just remind people here that the next WSIS Forum will be held in June, I think 12th to the 14th of June in Geneva, and we'll host the next meeting of the Dynamic Coalition. Again, the discussion will aim to talk about the targets reached by the Paris Agreement and SDGs 12, 13, and 15. The report also raises a few questions from the Dynamic Coalition to the IGF members, and I would encourage you to go through them and come back to the group with your insights so that we can improve the work of the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pratham. Thank you very much to all the wonderful Dynamic Coalition representatives, because you really followed the time guidance. And now I would like to open this floor to all of you participants in this session. Please grill the Dynamic Coalitions. Please ask your questions. I see already one hand over there. There would be roaming microphone around here. And please stand up because we are filming, and please speak close to the microphone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will read this so it's shorter. I'm Nicolas Secciani from Altermundi, also co-chair of the DC3. So I wanted to point out a couple of things. One is community networks are not about technology. They are about community and about recovering the spirit of a human-centered internet. I believe we are an example of how we can reverse the trend for concentration and centralized control the internet has been moving into for the past years. We are worried that governments have not been able to separate corporate lobbying interests from what the real need of the people to fully realize the rights is. Recommendation 19 from ITUD is many years old, but very little has been done. Hopefully, Resolution 268 from the Inter-American Commission on Telecommunications, CITEL, which is very specific about the need for governments to support the development of local non-profit internet operators in rural and disadvantaged areas, will help create a new balance in the regulatory and policy discussion from 2017 onwards, at least in this continent. I wanted to share these thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it was rather a comment than a question. We have a question from remote participant, and I don't remember, Arsene, you were introduced. If not, thank you very much. And this is Arsene, our remote moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tatiana. Actually, we have a few participants from remotes, and while we're still waiting from confirmation from the Syracuse University Remote Hub, we have like up to 5 students who are willing to be, who are connected to this session. But I'll go ahead and read, we have a question from Mr. Makan Nefai, who is from the African IGF Secretariat. And he says, I would like to know if the dynamic coalitions dealing with community connectivity issues have dealt with use of TV white spaces to take care of underserved areas when we know that there are a lot of unused frequencies in developing countries, while these frequencies could be used to serve the remote areas. In this context, these tools could be deployed in libraries and documentation centers, as these are widely available as access points in many developing countries and even rural or remote areas of developed countries.
Thank you very much. I would like to hand it to Luca and then to Christopher. Luca, you go first.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that is a very prominent issue, and actually, if you consider the declaration on community connectivity that we have been producing, the 4th point is about policy that can facilitate or hinder the deployment of community networks, and there is a specific one that I'm going to read, which specifically refers to spectrum, and particularly we say that a national as well as international policy should allow the exploitation of existing unlicensed spectrum bands or dynamically assigned secondary use of spectrum for public interest purposes, or consider the growth of unlicensed spectrum bands and special licenses for the needs of community connectivity. So that basically the fact is that there are already a lot of regulation on spectrum. Every country has one, but few of them, or basically none, or very few examples, let's say, allow non-for-profit to utilize spectrum for the public good, basically. And actually, there is also a chapter in the report that analyzes how to identify, to sense spectrum white spaces, and in order to understand how can they be used and who can be used them. And Maureen Hernandez, that is there, is the author of this excellent chapter that unfortunately is only in Spanish in this book, but it will be translated soon. So yes, spectrum is indeed a very prominent issue. We have tried to tackle it at the very first and more general level this year, but we are planning to invest a lot of time next year in the next report to analyze policy and regulation that can affect and facilitate the use of community networks, and to put forward some concrete proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca. Over to Christopher.
It's a wonderful question, and Luca speaks generally about spectrum, which is important. The question about TV white spaces is even more specific. There are, I said we have 200 case studies identified. We've completed 20 of them. 2 of them involve TV white spaces. I'd like to share them briefly. In Nepal, there is a gentleman who's actually here at the IGF, has pioneered a community network in the TV white spaces, has provided the first internet connectivity to 200 Nepalese villages in a situation where there was no prior service. And it's a spectacular achievement on his part. The Mwingu project is also another TV white spaces project in Kenya. It has connected 10,000 customers through Wi-Fi portals, and also 300,000 people through libraries and schools. And the most amazing thing, using TV white spaces. So there are wonderful success stories in Kenya in particular. There's a principal from a school connected to the TV white spaces based community network. She reports that the students' scores on the Kenyan national exam improved in every single subject after being connected to the internet. So it's another wonderful story that we are learning about how the internet promotes the kinds of sustainable development goals that are at the center of our current agenda.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I heard and saw the magic word libraries. Can you add something?
Yes, if someone mentions libraries, I have to say something. But yeah, we're already using it in some places, particularly in remote and rural US. The gigabit libraries network is something that the Makani should look into. The best thing I think about this potential for this technology is using libraries, schools, hospitals as anchor institutions, and then being able to give another definition to public access to the internet. You won't actually even have to come into the library in some respects to benefit from its services, and that can really go some distance at some point. So I think it's a technology we're going to see more of with the libraries.
Thank you very much. And I think we have a comment from remote participation.
Yes, we have a comment from, forgive me the name, who is Sivasubramanian from India, and he says this: Internet rights are an important aspect of internet governance. Core internet values are at the heart of the internet. These values are the foundation that makes internet what it is. The question of conflicts needs not to arise between the pursuits of the two coalitions. It's difficult to understand why this question is persistent.
Well, maybe it is my bad that I asked this question, but I think that there are enough of newcomers to the IGF or to the internet governance itself, and it's a very legitimate question to ask, but maybe, Olivier, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tatiana. I wanted to say something actually and comment on the comment that was made by the gentleman earlier on the changing nature of the internet because of various legislation or actions by governments or private sector. In fact, some of the points that you've made, I think, would fit very well in the Internet Rights and Principles Coalition, and some of them would fit very well in the core internet values, for the very reason that they are affecting both of these, and ultimately for the worse, as we're seeing at the moment. And I'd be really interested in speaking to you afterwards, because we are tracking those changes that are taking place when it comes down over to the technical side of things, and ultimately we might end up with a worse internet or a less usable internet than we have today.
Thank you very much, Hanan. Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I think it has been very challenging to codify human rights in local legislation, especially in oppressive regimes. So you find it, the language, that we use in the Internet Rights and Principles Charter, or the principles, is quite diluted, to be more comprehensive and simplified in a way that governments would be able to incorporate, the language that we have in their local legislation. This happened, but unfortunately it happened only in progressive countries like New Zealand and Italy. I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in underrepresented countries, like in the Middle East and Africa and so on. So I do relate to that, and we try to reach out to governments from these regions. The thing is, most of these governments, they don't speak human rights language, so we need to find different modalities to be able to, make sense to this very important stakeholder.
Sorry, thank you very much. I was told that our Twitter wall is surprisingly empty. This is sad. I urge you all who can tweet that you still have like 15 to 20 minutes to grill our Dynamic Coalition participants. Are there any questions from you? I see the hand over there. Please stand up, because we are filming, and keep close to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is George. I work in the cybercrime unit in the local police in Jalisco. I have a question for all the experts. Every day around the world, children and teenagers are creating videos of themselves naked or uploading videos of sex into the internet. Maybe in another case for revenge, for extortion, for maybe predators in the internet. So what can I do to promote an international protocol to prevent these cybercrimes? Is my question. Thank you.
I think that this might relate to gender coalition, so I will give the floor first to you and then to anyone who can contribute. John Carr, yes, I noted you, thank you.
Yes, to answer your question about intimate images that are being circulated online, I think at the Gender Coalition we divide what are called sex or naked images into two categories. Those that are consensually produced and exchanged among individuals, and those that are consensually produced but non-consensually distributed. And our position is that sexting or the exchange of intimate images is the digital equivalent of what used to be called the love letter in an ancient sort of time and space. And research has actually shown, there's a researcher in Canada who's studied this and found that with each age, there's been a new sort of way to express romance, intimacy, sex, love, etc. This in the digital age is one of the main mechanisms. So what we would like policymakers to actually do is have legislation that protects consensual exchange, but to take very strict action against non-consensual exchange that causes harm to people.
Thank you very much. John.
Hugely important issue, and thank you very much for raising it. Two numbers first. In a study done by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States of America, 15% of all of the images which were technically child pornography, as they call it in America, child abuse images as we call it in the UK, had been self-generated in the sense that there didn't appear to have been any malevolent third party involved in bullying or coercing the child into creating the image. Why do we know this? Because in each case the police were able to locate the actual child who had made the image themselves and talk to them. So there is, and this goes to the point that you were making there. We don't think children should be criminalized or prosecuted for doing things of that nature. They're experimenting and they're learning. They may be making mistakes, but they shouldn't be dragged into the criminal system because of that. Second number, this came from the study done by the Internet Watch Foundation in the United Kingdom. About 80% of the images that they found on paedophile websites, sorry, 80% of the images which had been self-generated by children were subsequently found on websites used by paedophiles and people who were collecting child abuse images. So it's very important that young people understand that even though they think they are sending this to the great love of their life, and God knows when I was 13, 14, I thought that was it for me as well. These things happen. They need to know that even though it might be consensual at the point where they make the exchange, there's a very strong risk, even if it's done by accident, that that image will escape into a much different environment. Another quick point I would like to make, because we've mentioned the internet, fundamental rights and so on, and I wonder what image of the internet people have in their heads. What is the internet like today? It's not like it was 20 years ago. 1 in 3 of every single internet user on the planet is a child below the age of 18. In parts of the developing world, it rises to nearly 1 in 2. In my own country and much of Europe, it's 1 in 5. So whatever else you think the internet is, or might be, or might become, it is a medium that is overwhelmingly being used by families and by children and by young people. And yet, if you look at the Net Mondial statement, for example, children, young people are not even mentioned once. And the fact is, they are too often marginalized and overlooked, even though they are 1 in 3 of every internet user on the planet.
Thank you very much, John, for this intervention. We have one question from the participant, 2 questions. Okay, I identified you, the gentleman in the white shirt, so you can just stand up and grab the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Ellis. I'm from Dublin in Ireland. And firstly, I'd like to thank Andrea for her contribution around accessibility for people with disabilities. I'm blind myself. And Andrea might want to chip in on this, but my question really is for everyone else on the panel. Disability doesn't stand alone for just people with disabilities. Every person on the planet will either grow old and acquire disabilities as they grow old, or they will die. So the preference is that all of our technologies will accommodate the needs of every single person on the planet. Okay, so I'm wondering, are the other people taking this into account and building it into their principles? So we say the core principles and rights. We say when you're building libraries, are you making them accessible? Are you making the technology there accessible? And one that you mightn't even have thought of is the question you were there of communities using spare spectrum. You wouldn't even think that if you use spare spectrum in the wrong way, you could interfere very easily with assistive listening devices and other assistive technologies used by people with disabilities. So we're saying, please take this into account in all areas, not just one dynamic coalition, because it improves the lives of everyone as they grow older.
Thank you very much. I believe that this comment could be addressed to several of our dynamic coalition. Andrea, if you don't have any do you have any particular comment to reply to this?
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry is blind, and one of the things that makes it very difficult for him to watch television is that there might not be any audio description. I had a question in my own mind directed to the gentleman who was talking about his compatriot who was able to link up rural areas with white spectrum and the white space. And the thing is was that thought of, and is that accessible? Probably not. There are other issues regarding spectrum also in highly populated countries like Germany, for example, where accessibility in television and broadcasting is not able to be done in a satisfactory fashion because all the spectrum is used up. And there is a situation where there are conflicting television systems that impact the ability for accessibility to be provided. I could list them, but I'm not going to take you into a technical area. There are severe problems of accessibility, not only in the internet, but also in broadcasting. And there are solutions that are possible through the internet, and one of them, the ITU, has been very instrumental in promoting and also has standardized regarding accessibility is Internet Protocol TV, not the old one, but the new one. So there's lots of issues that are not being taken into consideration. Libraries can be accessible because you can get in with a wheelchair, but are the websites accessible that people are using? So Jerry's right. There are so many other areas from each dynamic coalition that needs to be taken into account. Is the work that you're doing accessible to persons with disabilities? And I think everybody needs to look at their own backyard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christopher, over to you.
Jerry, thank you very much for the question. I think it's an important part that is becoming part that I'm gratified to see coming into our case studies. I've seen it already in a number of the 200 that we've identified. There is one we've completed. In India, Intel Learn Easy Steps is providing digital literacy training with 28 nonprofit organizations. One of them is devoted to providing digital literacy training to physically challenged individuals. And they're customizing the tools that they're using for training people in digital literacy for a different range of physical capacities. We're happy to try to identify these and to bring them to the attention of the entire community, but it'll be broader than that. It's not just disability, it will be gender, youth, seniors, and one of the most challenging things, people who are functionally illiterate. These are all challenges for us as a community, and we're happy to try to find them as examples and share them.
We really have time constraints now and not that much time left. Olivia, have you anything to add here? briefly.
Thank you, Tatiana. I was just going to add to what the question that Jerry was saying. One of the core internet values is that it should be user-centric, which means that you should have the choice of what you want to run and what you want to connect onto the internet. And it shouldn't be a gateway that blocks applications or tells you what applications you need to have on your desktop or in whatever device that you're using to connect to it. So that's a real important core internet value.
Thank you very much, Olivier. I think we have something from remote moderator, and we have remote hub connected, and we have one comment.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana. We are trying to connect with the students. It's Syracuse University in New York State. So if they can hear us, please, you have the floor. We can have them only on audio because the video didn't work. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yeah, we can even, yeah, give a second. We can even have you on video.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. And we can even see you.
We just wanted to thank you for giving us a shout out. That was an awesome shout out. And as you know, we did work on the educational resource guide. And we were just, we had a few comments. Hello? Okay. Oh, there's a delay. I apologize. I'm on a delay. But I just wanted to have a few comments. So we believe that they need to engage young audiences. I'm sorry, I have a reflection, but we believe that that there needs to be more promotion for young audiences in colleges. Also, we believe, if possible, that the IGF, and especially the Internet Rights and Principles Organization, needs to work closely with ICANN. We believe, since they're going to be the organization that is going to monitor the Internet, that they should monitor the Internet. And also, finally, I'm just getting comments. We were wondering what we can do to help to further our partnership with students too, with everybody around the world.
Thank you very much, Remote Hub.
Have another comment?
And we have one more comment from remote participant, and then I unfortunately will have to close the queue.
Thank you. We have Kevin Reiser, who is on the Coalition for Internet Rights and Principles Steering Committee, and he was the one helping coordinate the Syracuse University students. He's saying the Dynamic Coalition on Internet Rights and Principles has had a very positive experience with engaging university students, and we would be happy to work with other coalitions to help implement these methods of engagement and outreach for other coalitions. So probably they are just willing to be able to collaborate with the other coalitions. If the coalitions can share ways for students, university students, to collaborate with them, probably that can be helpful.
Thank you very much, Arsene. Thank you very much. I would like, we really have no time. I'm sorry for this. So I would like to wrap this up before I hand over to Marcus. I would like to thank you, fantastic participants, representatives of Dynamic Coalition. I would like to thank all of you who came here and participated in this session. And of course, I would like to thank Mexican government for bringing us all here. And Marcus, over to you for wrapping it up. Though if you are going to be quick, maybe we can give some time to Luca. But it's really a hard stop soon.
It's super quick, actually, directly related to the engaging students. I just wanted to say that with community networks, a lot of the people, the community that build them are students, or they do this as part of their university studies. And also, I also wanted to say that we have been talking a lot with Stuart and other fellow Dynamic Coalition friends from the Dynamic Coalition on Public Access to Library to try to cooperate and build some sort of synergy amongst us, so that the work that we produce to teach people how to do a community network can also be shared through the networks of the public libraries, so that students that usually go to private public libraries, or at least they should go there, can learn how to do their own community network, how to expand connectivity themselves.
Thank you very much, Luca. And now, Markus, up to you to wrap up, preferably in a tweet, as short as a tweet.
Thank you, Tatiana. And thank you, Luca. You anticipated much what I was going to say. This is not the end. And also thankful for the young people, the students who joined in. And all the Dynamic Coalitions are open and inclusive, so feel free to join the Dynamic Coalitions. We will immediately afterwards have a DC coordination session. This is an open session. All participants are invited, if interested, to join. And in particularly, Tatiana and Jeremy would certainly be most welcome to join us. This may not be that interesting to other participants because it's more inward-looking, but nevertheless, as we are open and inclusive, we are open. With that, I would like to thank you all. This was an experimental session, but my first assessment is I think it was a good experiment, and thank you very much, Tatiana. You did an excellent job. And thank you all the Dynamic Coalitions and the participants to this meeting. And I hope you will join me in giving a big hand to Tatiana and the representatives of the Dynamic Coalition in closing this session. Thank you.
They asked us to leave as quickly as possible.
Yes, and the session of the Dynamic Coalitions is in workshop room 9, and it starts immediately afterwards. Thank you. I close this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.